Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt, yeah!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure they'll get you your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt, yeah!
Switch to Jackson Hewitt and we'll beat what you paid last year, even if you filed online.
Yeah!
Ain't nothing to it. Switch to Jackson Hewitt and pay less for tax prep, guaranteed. Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com.
Offer not valid in all states or where prohibited by law. Loans are subject to lender approval. See website for details.
Honey, the credit card bill came, and we're maxed out.
Maxed out cards, rent is due. We just need some extra cash to help us get by.
Maybe we should go to 27cash.com.
With our bad credit?
27cash.com is one of the largest personal loan networks. They can help people with any type of credit get up to $5,000, and cash can hit our bank account as soon as tomorrow.
When you need extra cash, go to 27cash.com. That's 27cash.com. 27cash.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers.
On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms.
Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Only one type of burger. For every pallet. Fries are extra. Large in size. We've got the shakes. Going over the brim.
Hey, this is Chris from JCW's. Put a positive, delicious spin on your day at any one of our 5 locations. In Lehigh, American Fork, Provo, South Jordan, or Harriman. JCW's, quality and a lot of it.
Good morning. I'm the 40% off window company.
40% off? Of what?
Hey, 40% off.
Yeah, I'll bet it's your biggest sale of the year. This week only, because you need a model home in our neighborhood. Well, nothing. It's baloney. Hi, this is Kathy.
And Doug of Window World. When you hear those things, you know you've entered the baloney zone.
Resist the force of the baloney zone.
Find Window World online at windowworldutah.com.
Or call Window World at 281-8111. That's 281-8111.
And that's no baloney.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
I-15 still quiet and running smoothly. We're looking at about a KSL 16-minute travel time from Draper to downtown. Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. Includes 1 performance suit, 4 and collar shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, 1 pair of Echo or Johnson & Murphy shoes. Just $595. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunshine, highs in the mid-60s through the week. Right now, 59 degrees already and sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's the beginning of another week, and so, of course, we should begin by talking about the possibility of another government shutdown if Congress doesn't do its job and pass some spending extensions by the time midnight Friday arrives and the money runs out. If this is beginning to feel like deja vu all over again and again and again, you're not wrong. And so let's get past the headline of one more panic moment, fiscal cliff, shutdown showdown. Is there a way to break out of the cycle? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, here we are. Once again, I know it feels like Groundhog Day all year long because we keep having the same conversation about the same thing. And sadly, the solution is so incredibly simple. I'd say it's easy enough for a third grader, but that would be offensive to third graders because they get it. Because one thing that children begin to learn and understand is the absolute predictability of consequences. They know what happens when they don't eat their vegetables. They know what happens when they continue to tease their sister after mom and dad have said it's time to stop. They get it. But it appears that members of Congress don't, because it's become far too easy to just kick the can down the road. And amazingly, we now have a new formula for kicking the can down the road that allows us to kick 2 cans down the road so we can do it twice as often. And so if it feels like we're having this shutdown showdown conversation a lot here in 2024, it's because we are. Now, I will say that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, began his term as Speaker when he took over the gavel back in November. And he was optimistic, of course, as you would be rolling into a new position like that. He was optimistic that they could reform the congressional budget process and start a new way of doing things to actually get Congress to do the job they're supposed to do, as outlined in the Constitution, fund the government. 12 appropriations bills passed in the House and the Senate, sent over to the White House and signed into law by the president, and the government's funded. I will repeat what we often say on this show: never in the history of ever should there be a threat of a government shutdown. Ever. All Congress has to do is do their job and do it on time. So currently, we're dealing with last year's budget, by the way. We haven't even started to talk about what needs to be done by this September. We'll come back to that in a second. But let's start back in November because, of course, the reason the former Speaker of the House was ousted was because of the way things were going as it related to spending. And so Kevin McCarthy, by a vote in the House, the Speaker's seat was vacated, and it took several weeks and a whole lot of votes and a whole lot of hand-wringing, and Mike Johnson ultimately ended up getting the gavel. But then he immediately had to deal with the fact that they had to fund the government. And so rather than doing the traditional continuing resolution, Mike Johnson said, we're going to do this different. So during a press conference back in November, he introduced something new to the equation called the ladder CR process to move our government away from these perpetual big-time omnibus spending packages.
This is an important innovation, okay? The ladder CR, the two-step CR, it's going to change the way we've done this. We have broken the fever. We are not going to have a massive omnibus spending bill right before Christmas. That is a gift to the American people.
Now, I actually agreed with that it is a gift, that we didn't have to have a shutdown showdown right before the Christmas holiday last year. During that same press conference, he expressed optimism that Congress could run a clean and effective appropriations process moving into the new year.
The House Republican Conference is committed to never being in this situation again. I'm done with short-term CRs. We're resolved. So what that means is you're going to see in the beginning of this next year, we'll be walking and chewing gum at the same time. We're going to get the appropriations process running on time as it's supposed to be under law.
Okay, so he split the 12 appropriations bills up into 2 packages, one with 8, one with 4. So now we have a 2-tier deadline. And he set those things into January, thinking that everyone would go home for the holidays. People would come back after that break in the 1st of January and get back to work and come together, get the spending packages done, and moved on. Of course, he came back in January and immediately faced another shutdown showdown. But now, because of the 2-step approach, the ladder approach, which I applauded as a way to, hey, let's at least give it a shot, see if we can't do something a little different, he immediately had to kick 2 cans down the road. And so in an interview in January, talking about the spending deal to prevent a shutdown, the Speaker said this about the criticism he faced from some of his fellow Republicans who were still looking for deeper cuts than that deal included.
Look, leadership is tough. You take a lot of criticism. This is a very serious priority of mine. This deal, this agreement, is a down payment on restoring us to fiscal sanity in this country.
All right, down payment. Good language, fiscal sanity, good approach. Kick both cans down the road into February. And again, they were spaced about 2 weeks apart. So you would have the first 4 set of spending bills that were due, and then you had the next 8. And nothing got done. Nothing could get done. And so got to kick both cans down the road. So, yes, it is hard. So in February, another funding deadline was approaching, and so they moved both the dates back again. Speaker Johnson spoke to reporters after a vote in the House that failed to pass those latest appropriations bills. Here's how he described it.
So, look, the appropriations process is ugly. Democracy is ugly. This is the way it works every year, always has, except that we've instituted some new innovations. We broke the omnibus fever, right? That's how Washington has been run for years. We're trying to turn the aircraft carrier back to real budgeting and spending reform.
Okay, so yes, the big omnibus, that's when you put all 12 of those things together into one massive bill, and that is a disaster, by the way. It's horrible, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. It's a horrible way to govern. It's no way to govern, actually, because all you do is have this big thousands and thousands of pages that nobody can read, and there's all kinds of little kicks and kickbacks inserted in there by way of appropriations and earmarks, and it's how you get $34 trillion in debt. So the Speaker was not wrong in that, and he's right. It is ugly. It's like watching the sausage being made. Nobody wants to watch that, but that's the job. Everybody who's in Congress signed up to do that job. It's one of the very few jobs that they know specifically they're supposed to do, that they have to do constitutionally. So last week at a retreat, we'll talk about the word retreat. I think you should only have an advance. I don't think you should retreat. But they had a retreat, perhaps because they were retreating once again, facing another shutdown showdown. Now, this time they took those first 4 bills and they kicked them all the way to September. But coming this week, they still have 8 more to go. And so now the question is, what gets done there? Otherwise, all of the agencies that fall under that, which include big things like defense, will be shut down. So at the retreat, the Speaker spoke to reporters about the incremental gains in the funding negotiation process. Here's how he described it.
We're breaking the omnibus tradition, of course, and we're working to get Congress back to regular order. We've taken the first step to begin addressing our unsustainable spending. And as I say to my conference, it's not the time for long Hail Mary passes on every play, but it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. This is an incremental thing that we have to do to change Washington and how it works.
Incremental. For the rest of us, it's a lot of Groundhog Day. We keep doing the same thing. Now we're doing this double kicking of the can down the road. We're going to stay with this conversation and look ahead to what we should be watching over the next few days as we go towards the shutdown showdown on Friday. Trust me, there will be no shutdown. They'll kick this can down the road as well. And then once again, we'll have 2 cans sitting somewhere down the road that somebody is going to have to pay for. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
This Monday Tax Tip is brought to you by Susan Spears, CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs.
Do you have a dependent in college? Do you depend on tuition tax credits to reduce your tax liability? Form 1098-T is a statement sent by schools and copied to the IRS that verifies that you paid what the IRS calls qualified educational expenses in the preceding tax year. If you don't get this official verification, you cannot claim the American Opportunity or Lifetime Learning Tax credits for the tuition, books, supplies, and equipment expense needed for classes. The student will need to contact the educational institution and request the Form 1098-T. Your CPA will be able to assist you as well.
Get the most out of your income tax preparation when you hire a CPA. Go to uacpa.org to find a CPA that's right for you. That's uacpa.org. Listen to KSL on Monday for more tax tips from the Utah Association of CPAs.
While not quite spring, it's been pleasant.
Sunny skies, mid-50s.
But we all know, in Utah, that can change in a moment.
A sure sign of spring is a wind.
It helps to know what you're facing each day with traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s.
We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-575-8157. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. There is zero risk to you. If we can't reduce your tax debt, then you pay nothing. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have a 5-star rating on Google and Yelp and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-575-8157. That's 800-575-8157. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
It's finally time to say goodbye to the snow and hello to spring, and right now is the best time to spring into adventure in an RV from a Motorsportsland RV Center. Through this week, come check out Motorsportsland's season kickoff event and find the RV of your dreams at best of your pricing. Is your next adventure in a Class A motorhome? Come check out our 33-foot Georgetown 33B3 right now and save over $57,000 off MSRP. Or maybe a luxury fifth wheel is more your style. Check out our Durango Gold 386 FLF right now for over $45,000 off MSRP. Want to bring all the toys? Check out our 30-foot Raptor Carbon Series toy hauler on sale now for under $37,000 with financing under $340 a month OAC. Ask about zero-down financing options as well. See details and more amazing deals on premium RVs at motorsportsland.com.
Let Motorsportsland help you get away.
Motorsportsland.com.
What would you say if I told you you could get a free furnace? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and I hope you'd at least say, tell me more. Now, before you get too excited, let me explain how this works and why we do our free furnace sale. We feel like we've got the best HVAC techs around and we want to keep them. But the only way we can do that is if they're working and providing for their families, so we set money aside for this free furnace sale. We're only able to give you this great deal because you're helping us keep our guys busy. It's actually great if you've been thinking about replacing both your furnace and air conditioner, because when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services by March 31st to schedule a free estimate. One of our HVAC supervisors will come to your home and explain all the details. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services today and schedule your free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the BYU Cougars getting ready to play in the opening round of the NCAA tournament, but they're seated lower than they might have been because they won't play on Sunday. Second, new polls show a lot of American voters don't much like President Biden or former President Trump. Third, President Biden talked with the Prime Minister of Israel today as concern grows about food shortages among Palestinians in Gaza. 59 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and if you're just joining us, we're staying with the conversation because, of course, if it's a Monday, we must be facing a potential showdown by Friday. And it's actually true. We are facing another showdown, although you can put your panic buttons away. It won't happen. We will have another proverbial kicking of the can down the road. And as we were talking about in the first segment, there's actually two cans that we get to kick down the road now because we do this bifurcated ladder approach that Speaker Mike Johnson introduced back in November. And I think it was a good idea. I'm for anything that makes the process more streamlined, more efficient, anything that prevents us from having big omnibus, thousands and thousands of pages of bill text, and a whole lot of earmarks thrown in, and no one having any time to scrutinize it, read it, before they have to take a vote on it. So I think that was a good move. The reality is we are so broken in Congress that we're just going to keep doing this until until we either crack everything open. So it's one thing to be broken. It's another thing to be broken open. And that's where I think Congress has to get. They have to be willing to be broken open and just solve the problem, which is to just do the job. And I just remind all our listeners that part of the frustration factor of all of this for every American citizen I've talked to is the fact that we all have to do this every day. We do this around the kitchen table. We do it sitting at the computer late at night. We try to figure out how we're going to make sure that we don't run out of money before we run out of month, and make sure that the bills are paid and some set aside for a rainy day and hopefully a retirement or a child's education or whatever it might be. We plan and we do this. And sometimes it requires negotiating with a spouse or getting your whole family to sit down and say, you know what? We got to cut back on some spending. Where's it going to be? We can't do everything, so what are we going to do? What matters? But Congress seems to be unwilling to have that conversation because the current battle, I just have to remind everyone, the current battle that we're having is about the work that should have been done a year ago. A year ago. So we are a year behind schedule. And so all of the shutdown showdowns we're experiencing right now are for things that were supposed to be done, voted on, signed into law, well before September 30th of 2023, last year's work. So currently, Congress should be working on those 12 appropriations bills that are due this September. And yes, we have proven it out. September 30th always comes. Every year. It's incredible. It is incredible. And yet members of Congress seem to be shocked that it comes. And then there's a deadline. And then we have a shutdown showdown. And we have to avoid a crisis. And we can't let the government shut down. And so we kick the can down the road. And, of course, now we kick 2 cans down the road because we do it in 2 pieces. So what to expect this week? This week, you'll see a lot of hype and hysteria Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Members of Congress will mostly get back into D.C. late today, early tomorrow, and they'll start working through, okay, gang, what's the plan? And they will likely do what they did with the first portion, we'll call it the first can, 4 appropriations bills, which they kicked to September. And again, that doesn't do anything. We'll talk about the problems that creates in a second. So they've kicked one of the cans to September. My guess is they will now do this again. There were some delays over the weekend. They thought they had a deal. But then over the weekend, there were a little bit of process problems that forced Congress to really begin this week without having a real plan in place. So as they look at that, as they look at the things that are happening, the things that have to be done, again, 8 of these that have to be done, including just little things like, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, Education, the IRS. Some of us might not complain too heavily about that one. And then there's all kinds of government, general government and foreign operations. All of those have to be done. The interesting thing is part of the holdup that occurred over the weekend is that there are some in the Democratic side of the aisle who are requesting more funding for pay equity for the Transportation Security Administration. And for the Republicans' part, there are a number of them who are asking for additional money for immigration and customs enforcement, detention, enforcement efforts, those kinds of things. Those are the big things happening down at the border. So all of that to say both sides are trying to negotiate not to cut spending, but to spend more of what we don't have. So that's going to be the battle for the week, and they'll figure this part out, and they will kick the can to September the 30th. And then hopefully, they can start doing the work that they should have already been working on. I mean, we are in the middle of March already, and yet we're still dealing with 2023 issues in terms of funding the government. Now, all of that you can say, well, no big deal. We just kind of keep it on autopilot. We just keep the spending levels at the same level, and that's okay. But it's not. And here's what's underneath the headline that most people don't talk about. When you have those spending levels set, that those funds get set for specific things. So specific programs inside of the Department of Education, for example, a particular weapons program inside of the Department of Defense. And so let's take those two examples. And let's say that that weapons system inside the Department of Defense is not working, is way over budget, and you want to get rid of it. Well, guess what? You can't replace it with anything because it hasn't been approved by Congress. So when we say that it's a continuing resolution, it is continuing exactly as it is. So you can't change it. Or let's say inside the Department of Education, let's say there was a program that got funded by Congress, had all this great upside potential, and let's say it's producing poor results. And let's say that even every member in the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrats, Independents, everybody agreed we should change the program. Even if we all agreed on what the new program should be, you can't do that because it hasn't been approved. Because the funds were appropriated to that failing program that everyone on both sides of the aisle would like to get rid of and replace with a new one that would be awesome and better and produce better results and everyone agrees on. But you can't do that under a continuing resolution. And so that's where the problem gets really complicated and really difficult. And it actually impacts us more than we think. Some people have become so content or so accustomed to continuing resolutions that we don't really flinch or bat an eye. It's like, well, as long as they funded the government, we're okay, even if they're funding at last year's levels. Well, it's not quite that simple. You have to go underneath the headline of that and look at what else is that impacting. And it impacts you and it impacts me. It impacts our community. It impacts our country because they're not doing the job. It's so simple. So part of that is shining a light on it and say, this is what's really going on with all of these shutdown showdowns. They're great for politics. They're great for theater. They're great for members to do their social media moment. But there are a lot of ramifications beyond the fact that it's spending us into oblivion, especially for our children and grandchildren who will have to deal with this. They may not be able to pay for it, but they're going to feel the impact of it. And the people who will feel that the most are going to be the poor and the most vulnerable among us, because there won't be anything to negotiate. There'll be draconian cuts that nobody can defend and nobody can stop. And so it's time for a different kind of conversation. Let's get out of the Groundhog Day discussion. Let's get out of the kick the can down the road discussion. Let's get out of the kick two cans down the road discussion. Let's get back to the constitutional discussion of you ran for Congress in the House or the Senate. You knew what the job was. This is the job. Do the job. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomis. KSL's top local story this hour. Police are investigating a wrong-way crash that killed one person and hurt two others over the weekend. Troopers say it happened near 500 South in Salt Lake when a wrong-way driver crashed into another car that had two people inside. They're looking into whether or not the wrong-way driver was impaired. The Mega Millions and Powerball lottery jackpots are climbing again. Mega Millions up to $875 million. The next drawing is tomorrow night. Powerball up to about $600 million. Of course, the odds of winning either of those lotteries, about 300 million to 1. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Vladimir Putin has been declared the winner of Russia's presidential election, in which no substantial competition was permitted. That didn't keep his supporters from gathering in Red Square for a celebration that he attended. And your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, so is the NASDAQ right now as we move toward the close of trading. And coming up, it looks like a sunny week ahead, maybe with some clouds by Thursday and Friday. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine. So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/olderadults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure they'll get you your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt!
Switch to Jackson Hewitt and we'll beat what you paid last year, even if you filed online. Ain't nothing to it. Switch to Jackson Hewitt and pay less for tax prep, guaranteed. Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370 or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, traffic is a little slow on Bangerter Highway southbound going around the 201 freeway approaching 3500 south in West Valley. Lagoon is looking for ride maintenance technicians. Lagoon offers excellent mechanical training programs with amazing career opportunities. Ride maintenance technician position is full-time and year-round. Details visit lagoonpark.com/jobs. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, sunshine the next several days, maybe some clouds Thursday and Friday, but temperatures all along will be in the mid-60s. Right now we're at 61 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we often look at what does happen on a bipartisan basis, and there's actually a lot of it that does occur in our nation's capital. We don't hear about it a whole lot. The challenge, though, is often when we're being told something is bipartisan, often that should send your spidey sense up. We have a rule at my house: if you have to declare it, you're not it. And sometimes when we declare very loudly and repeatedly how bipartisan something is, we better watch out for the back end, because it may fall in the not so fast, my friend, category. One of those that we've been taking a look at is the infrastructure bill. 2021, touted as a bipartisan solution to deal with so many of the big issues of the day. And it was bipartisan in nature. So that's a good thing. Then we get to the not so fast, my friend, underneath the headlines. And that is that we have had a very hyper-partisan implementation of a very bipartisan piece of law. That's an interesting thing to look at, a challenging thing to really dissect. There was a fascinating piece in The Hill today at thehill.com talking about President Biden's very hyper-partisan implementation of the very bipartisan infrastructure law. And that's often where we have to, again, get past the headline, get to the think again moment. Joining us, really pleased to have Timothy Lee joining us on the program. He's a senior vice president of legal and public affairs at the Center for Individual Freedom. And Timothy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Great piece by the president of your organization, Jeffrey Mazzella, talking about this. And we were just talking before you came on about we love to tout that we have something that's bipartisan. That's a good thing, but we have a rule at my house. If you have to declare it, you're not it. And sometimes when we declare things too often, it may be something we have to look twice at. And so you've taken a look there at the Center for Individual Freedom on a very bipartisan bill that is being implemented in a not so bipartisan way. Tell us about it.
Yeah, not only is it hyper-partisan, but a lot of your listeners will know that one of the most anticipated Supreme Court cases this year has to deal with what's called Chevron deference, and that's the degree to which courts will defer to these executive agencies, as we're currently witnessing with the Biden administration. And it's probably going to get overturned, and that's a good thing because these administrative agencies and bureaucrats that run them are running out of control. So this is also hyper-partisan, as you mentioned. What we've got here is the infrastructure bill, essentially. And Joe Biden likes to go around in his reelection campaign talking about how he achieved this and how it was bipartisan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is he's taking what should be a bipartisan bill and was a bipartisan passage and converting it into a very, very hyper-partisan execution of it. And so what we're dealing with here is the broadband expansion. There are still about 14 million people in America that lack broadband access, so it's a good thing that Republicans and Democrats agreed we should expand into them. So they granted about $43 billion to this program. And here's the key, and here's why it's so hyper-partisan. It said specifically in the law they cannot include price controls. So imagine this thing playing out. The government spends $43 billion to expand broadband. Well, they use private companies to do that. And so a company has to give a bid, and they say, look, we can do it for X amount. And so prices are something that cannot change. And so the bill said explicitly, you can't impose price controls on these companies that are doing it. In addition to the actual text of the law itself, several people within the Biden administration, including the Secretary of Commerce implementing this bill, testified before the Senate and said, no, price controls will not be part of this. These are their own words. And so the law itself and the administration's own personnel said there will be no price controls. Well, guess what's happening right now? They're imposing price controls. What happens is the states, individual states come back and say, okay, here's our plan to expand broadband to X rural community. Well, the Biden administration is not green lighting this without a promise of price controls. And so that puts these companies in a bind. How are you going to expand broadband to these distant rural areas if the government is forcing you to sell it at a rate that doesn't compensate you for your costs? And so it's a terrible, terrible thing. And unfortunately, the people who pay the highest price are people without broadband in some of these rural communities. So it's hyper-partisan, and it violates the law, and it's yet another example of this administrative agency abuse that's at the heart of one of the biggest Supreme Court cases this year.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to see how that moves forward with the Chevron doctrine, with the Supreme Court taking that up. Give us a little sense in terms of, you mentioned it right there at the end, unpack it for us a little bit in terms of especially these rural communities, some of these places, many of which are in pretty conservative red states, and suddenly those that everyone in a bipartisan manner agreed we should help and we should do some things for, suddenly the administrative state again, by rule, and Congress loves to do this, these big sweeping statements of we shall have clean air and everyone shall have broadband. And then they turn it to the agency who then gets to do what it likes, and it's not up for re-election this year.
That's exactly right. It's sort of like the Environmental Protection Agency that, we all want clean air, but when they start imposing bipartisan laws in a way that doesn't really have anything to do with environmental protection and just has more to do with state control, that's where we have a problem. And this is another example of it. So picture yourself out in a rural community. Maybe you moved out there during COVID and you depend on these things, broadband, and you're getting left behind because other people have it in big cities, but you don't have it in the rural areas. So it actually was a great idea, and that's why it was bipartisan,
right?
With Republicans and Democrats to say, let's get these people broadband. And unfortunately, the Biden administration has other ideas. It's part of their hyper-partisan political agenda. And it needs to be stopped and it needs to be corrected. So that's the process we're underway now. But bringing this to people's attention is the first step. I know up in Utah, you're probably going to have a lot of people that are subject to this as well. I'm from Arizona, and so I'm certainly familiar with rural communities in Utah and Arizona.
Yeah.
And to have this really thrown in their face by the Biden administration, which ironically is going around the nation as part of their reelection campaign, trying to claim themselves bipartisan and trying to claim this as an achievement, when it's not really an achievement if they're undermining the actual bill itself. So that adds to the irony of it all.
Yeah, great perspective, great insight. Timothy Lee, Senior Vice President of Legal and Public Affairs at the Center for Individual Freedom. And this is why we have to make sure we have laws that are written well, that are vetted properly, that are debated in public in front of the American people, that there's opportunities for amendments and votes and negotiations and all of that, so that we aren't just turning over big swaths to the administrative portion of the program, who, again, is not, we can't hold them accountable with a vote. They're not up for re-election. And then it also gives our members of Congress the ability to shrug their shoulders and say, hey, I voted for broadband for everyone in our rural communities. If you have a problem, go talk to the agency. And so it kind of absolves anyone from real accountability. Timothy Lee, thanks again for joining us. Great perspective. We'll continue to track this one as it moves forward.
Thank you. This is a really important issue, and we'll press forward as well. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Again, that's Timothy Lee from the Center for Individual Freedom. And that's a crucial conversation. This is why you hear me over and over call for that transparency and for process. Because if all we do is pass sweeping bills with great-sounding names, they can be applied in a very hyper-partisan way, and they end up hurting rather than helping the very people everyone signed on in a bipartisan way to support. We've got to get it a little bit better. We'll be right back.
This Friday from 10 to 1, the movie show comes to Sound Sleep Medical. But first, take the time to learn about a better night's rest. Sound Sleep Medical delivers oral appliance therapy that treats sleep apnea without the use of CPAP machines. They're professionally fit, warranted, and covered by most major medical insurance. End the days of a poor night's sleep. Sound Sleep Medical will help. Call Sound Sleep Medical at 801-716-8672 for details. Sound Sleep Medical.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio. Or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
How much is your health worth? I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I thought about it a few years ago before I lost the weight with Soda Weight Loss. And I thought, man, if I just lose some weight, that would help with so many other things. Because my doctor had talked to me about how instead of taking a pill for cholesterol and everything else, why not try to lose weight? Well, I did. I finally did with Soda Weight Loss. They made it easy to lose weight and to address my health issues. I feel so much better. I feel healthier, and I can do so much more. And I'm not the only one. Here, for example, this is John.
Well, my diabetes A1C was 5.89, 6 point something. And when I went back, I was at 4.9. Joint mobility is so much better.
There is no part of your health that's not going to improve when you lose weight. Soda will get you there. And here's the best part, keep you there for the rest of your life. Go to sodaweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com. Soda is state of the art.
Alpine Home Medical. We bring wellness home.
Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. This is a story that came to us from a real customer, and I wanted to share it with you.
We came in looking for a scooter for our mother. The staff at Alpine showed us different options for scooters and battery-operated wheelchairs and helped us find one that was easy for her to handle and easy for us to get in and out of her car. They have fabulous customer service.
We know when you walk through our doors, you deserve to be cared for. We really do have the best staff in the state. Discover the Alpine Home Medical difference. When you need assistance, we're here for you. You should know we accept most major insurances, so stop by any of our 11 locations today and explore our high-quality inventory. We love hearing about your experiences. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical. We bring wellness home.
Step into a world of home transformation with The Blind Man, your ultimate partner in creating your dream home. Whether on a new home journey or refreshing your space, The Blind Man has you covered. Literally. Envision the latest styles, cutting-edge technology, and elegance in shades, shutters, or blinds. Now, if you hesitated to turn your dreams into reality, the moment has arrived. The Blind Man's Buy 4, Get 1 Free extravaganza on all exclusive Blind Man brand window coverings is here. Not just a sale, but a dream opportunity. Picture your home bathed in natural light or shaded for moments of privacy. The Blind Man understands your needs. They want all homes to be masterpieces. Unlock your dream home with the Blind Man's Buy 4, Get 1 Free deal. It's not just a window of opportunity. It's a gateway to artistic bliss. Don't miss out. Visit theblindman.com for a free in-home consultation. Yeah, free. Let the Blind Man transform your vision. Theblindman.com, where dreams meet reality.
From Ogden to St. George, Utah's premier window covering provider, The Blind Man.
Any Hour Services can help unclog any drain in your house, whether you have a backup, a clog, or a slow drain you want fixed. Call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Dave and Dujanovic.
One person described it like this: I like having 1,000 one-minute conversations. So often we think we've got to dive in head first and know everything before we can speak on something. No, we can have a bunch of little conversations.
There's more than one opinion, and more than one opinion or viewpoint matters. I want our listeners to walk away from this show knowing that more than one opinion is valid.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah's had another wrong way fatality over the weekend. Second, Vladimir Putin greeted the crowds in Red Square celebrating his re-election as Russia's president in a vote where no serious opposition was allowed. And third, it feels like spring with highs in the 60s. The equinox is tomorrow. 61 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Well, we're staying with the conversation and just how the president or the administration should or shouldn't be involved in a whole host of things. If you missed the last segment, we were talking about how the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the component about broadband for rural communities, is being implemented by the agency in an incredibly hyperpartisan manner. All of those things do matter. Now we're going to shift gears and look at where the president might put his nose in or out, particularly as it relates to steel. The U.S. Steel Company, a deal with Nippon Steel, and what the president's role should or shouldn't be, and how this should all play out. We always turn to Eric Boehm from Reason. And Eric, welcome on a Monday. You can't make this stuff up anymore. So for those who did not wake up thinking about the deal between U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel, tell us what the lay of the land is.
Yeah, Boyd, thanks for having me, as always. Glad to be back with you guys. This was a deal that was announced late last year, in December, actually, when Nippon Steel announced that they were going to be buying U.S. Steel. There was an immediate kind of backlash in the political culture from actually people on both the right and the left. People like J.D. Vance on the right, some of the national, NatCons, if you will, or the new right, some opposition to this idea, and then, kind of the same thing from people on the far left. But, now there was a push at the time to kind of get President Biden or to get the administration to, maybe prevent this purchase from happening, prevent the merger, either via a mechanism like the CFIUS, which is a kind of black box, shadowy agency, kind of combination of actually a number of intelligence and economic agencies that review potential investments from overseas, or maybe through the FTC, something like that. Last week, the latest news on this is that President Biden did put out a statement, very brief statement last week, saying that he opposes the deal and that he's looking to take further action to prevent it. So somewhat vague on what exactly that means, but it's certainly a political signal. And as I said in the piece I wrote at the end of last week, quite frankly, this shouldn't be any of the president's business. It shouldn't be any of these people's business. It's a private deal between two private companies. And I don't see why there's any reason why the government should be involved in this.
Yeah, and your piece is so spot on. And I want to dig into some of that because I think it's important for all of us to recognize what's underneath the headlines. So as you pointed out, Eric, the politics of it is easy. The president, of course, is defending American steel workers. So we can't let a Japanese steel company do that. You point out in the piece that really neither U.S. Steel really isn't a U.S. company, and Nippon Steel really isn't a Japanese company anymore.
Yeah, I think so much of this story, I mean, this wouldn't even be a story if U.S. Steel wasn't called U.S. Steel, right? It just It sounds like it's literally an arm of the federal government. Terrific branding decision on their part many years ago, because I think that's been a factor in, subsidies and support and all of that they've received over the years, too. It sounds like, patriotic company, right? But it's not. It's a private company. It's a publicly traded company, which means its shareholders are literally all over the world. Yeah. Anybody can go buy shares in U.S. Steel. There's nothing about it that is essential to the existence of the United States or to the continued sovereignty of the country. And then the same is true for Nippon Steel, publicly traded company. They've got shareholders all over the world. They operate here. I mean, obviously their headquarters is in Japan, but they already operate some steel plants here in the United States, big one down in Alabama. So the whole sort of, it's almost like xenophobic framing of this, of the Japanese are one of our closest allies, for that matter, are coming in here and trying to buy up our steel plants to do what with? I don't know. They want to invest their money and employ our people. That doesn't sound bad to me, but it's it's just a really unfortunate, quite frankly, I think quite xenophobic way of looking at this, as if this is some sort of foreign takeover.
Yeah.
When that's just not the truth.
Yeah, and that is the easiest play for all of this, right? National security interests. U.S. has to have its own steel. We can't be dependent on some foreign government that may go hostile sometime, and let alone the fact that they're one of our closest allies and most important trading partners. And this is something else you pointed out in your piece that I love, is they're actually preparing Nippon Steel to invest $1.4 billion in things that would benefit U.S. steel workers.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Not only is this a win for U.S. Steel shareholders, right? The U.S. Steel stock price went up quite dramatically after this deal was announced in December, and then it lost about a fifth of its value over the last few days after Biden said that he's going to use the power of the federal government to try to prevent the deal. So that's crazy. Biden is punishing U.S. Steel shareholders for trying to get in the way of this deal, which doesn't make any sense. He's punishing U.S. Steel workers,
right?
Because the purchase was going to be a huge infusion of capital. There was going to be $1.4 billion reportedly put in there. So that means more steel work being done in the United States. Isn't that the goal? Isn't that what the Biden administration and the NatCons on the right, for that matter, what they want is they want more industry happening here. They want the United States to make more stuff. As the Wall Street Journal pointed out in their coverage of this, they said that, in many ways, this deal between Nippon and U.S. Steel is a victory for Biden's attempts to revive American manufacturing. And yet here you have the Biden administration standing up and saying, no, we don't want to see this happen. I guess, the only sort of thing you could imagine that would be a reason for the government to get involved here would be if there was some sort of concern about monopoly or something like that. But that's clearly not the case either. There's plenty of steel manufacturing that goes on all around the world and the United States. So, I don't think there's good justification for stopping the deal on antitrust grounds either. This is just really it's purely about politics, and quite frankly, the politics are even somewhat confusing and misguided.
Yeah, they definitely are. I want to spend just our last couple of minutes where you closed out your piece rolling into the weekend, and this is March Madness at its finest. You pointed out the fact, whether it's TikTok, whether it's U.S. Steel or Nippon Steel, that private companies shouldn't have to hire an army of lawyers and lobbyists to get approval from the president or Congress to do business. I mean, that's the ultimate in crony capitalism, which I think we're supposed to be against that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on top of all the other objectionable parts of the story, the kind of under the radar detail here is that Cleveland Cliffs, like a steelmaking company that's based in Ohio, J.D. Vance's Ohio, by the way, and, very important to presidential elections, Ohio, they had made a previous bid to purchase U.S. Steel, and Nippon Steel had beaten them out for the purchase. So kind of the undercurrent here, and the Wall Street Journal has done some wonderful reporting on this, as have some other publications as well, about the extent of the lobbying that's gone on behalf of Cleveland Cliffs to try to blow up this deal, so that then Cleveland Cliffs has the opportunity to come in and maybe purchase U.S. Steel, get a second bite at the apple, if you will. And that is just grotesque to me. That now you've got obviously Nippon now is reportedly hiring a lot of lobbyists and spending a lot of time and energy in D.C. to try to make this deal go through. These are all private companies making their own decisions. The executives in charge of these companies have made the decisions that are in the best interest of the companies and their shareholders and their workers. And it's just crazy that you have to also get permission from the government to do these sorts of things. You mentioned a bunch of other examples too. I mean, everything from TikTok to the attacks on Amazon. There's just sort of this ongoing trend, really a bipartisan trend, unfortunately, of greater intrusion into what are fundamentally it's private business. It's none of the government's business to be involved here.
Great perspective as always. The March Madness has officially begun, and Eric Boehm is going to continue to help us navigate it. I don't know what kind of bracket this turns into, but this is mind-boggling, head-scratching. And very irritating, because this is not the way it's supposed to be. But great breakdown of all of this. We'll continue to watch that. Eric Boehm, of course, from Reason. You can check out his piece. Everybody should read it. It'll give you a great insight into what's really going on. Check that out at Reason.com. Eric, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Boyd. Have a good one.
All right, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. And it does seem that all things are politics, even the sale or non-sale of a steel company goes right through Ohio. Important elections coming up in Ohio this week. We'll take a look at that in hour number 2, along with a host of other things. Stick around for the rest of Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back after top of the hour news.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, we have breaking news. One of the most senior members of Utah's legislature is retiring. Republican Senator Kurt Bramble has served in the legislature for 24 years, and he'll continue through the end of his term, but he won't run for re-election. One of the issues he's best known for is the law that allows candidates to qualify for the primary ballot by submitting signatures rather than winning their nominations in a party convention. Taylorsville police have released new details in yesterday's officer-involved shooting on the west side. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has the latest.
In an email statement, Taylorsville PD say it was 33-year-old Fuedi Afiaki, who alleged while confronting him in his garage about a domestic dispute, he pulled out a handgun. And in that moment, 3 officers opened fire on him. Afiaki was sent to the hospital in critical condition and succumbed to his injuries.
And those officers have now been placed on administrative leave. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, so is the NASDAQ. Both of them have been moving upward through the day. Our KSL weather, Looks like spring has sprung. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hey guys, meet Salt Lake City's favorite men's health expert.
Hi, I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. I've been treating men suffering from low T and ED for over 5 years. And before that, I was a combat medic in the Army and a Navy corpsman in the Marine Corps, responsible for my men and their health every day. I understand firsthand the health challenges that impact men. Many of my patients come to me because they've noticed a lack of energy, loss of strength, increased belly fat, and even depression. Low T can impact your whole life, but so can proper treatment of it. And hearing that my patients are back to living life to the fullest, that's the best part of my job.
Guys, if you're looking for affordable, guaranteed low T and ED solutions, contact Revive for a free T-check and exam today, saving you $199. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure they'll get you your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt!
Switch to Jackson Hewitt and we'll beat what you paid last year, even if you filed online. Ain't nothing to it. Switch to Jackson Hewitt and pay less for tax prep, guaranteed. Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com.
Ulta Beauty's semi-annual beauty event is happening now. Unleash your love for beauty with 50% off daily beauty steals on hair, skin, makeup, and fragrance. Shop your favorite brands like Tarte and Fenty Beauty by Rihanna. Plus, grab perfect hair care pairs from brands like Redken and Olaplex. And check out new arrivals from brands like Charlotte Tilbury and Dyson. Shop the Ulta Beauty semi-annual beauty event online, in-store, or try pickup today. Now through March 28th. Ulta Beauty. The possibilities are beautiful. Conditions apply.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers.
On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms.
Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, there is an auto pedestrian accident. This is South State Street, 1540 South. You're going to want to allow some extra room for them to be working on that. The UACPA supports certified public accountants in Utah throughout ongoing professional education and leadership development. Find a CPA that works for you at uacpa.org. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
And a KSL weather, sunny, highs in the mid-60s through the week. Right now we're 61 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, Russia held presidential elections over the weekend. Headline, Vladimir Putin won. What's underneath that headline? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, of course, no shocker in the headline department that Vladimir Putin has won a fifth six-year term as the leader of Russia. Amazingly, 87%. He won 87% of the vote. Can you believe that? That tends to be in the range. It's actually a little bit on the lower end of the range that most dictators tend to win elections by. But 87% is nothing to sneeze at, even for Vladimir Putin. So it's a big number, and obviously there's a whole lot of things that go underneath that in the Think Again department. And so we're going to unpack that just a little bit as we start the second hour of the show. And while we can clearly see that these kinds of elections are neither free nor fair, it is worth raising the question, why does Vladimir Putin care about elections at all? That's a good question. Vladimir Putin, of course, had a big victory celebration that he won, landslide victory. Important for him to show the Russian people that they elected him, that he is in charge, and that everything's going to be just fine because he is at the helm for another six-year term. So in his victory speech, Vladimir Putin stressed unity as part of that and tried to make that case that it's us against the world to the Russian people.
Still, a lot has to be done, but when we stand together, when we are all consolidated, and I think it's now obvious to anyone, no matter how hard they try to scare us, no matter how hard they try to suppress us, to suppress our will, our conscience, no one has ever succeeded in history. They failed now, and they will fail in the future. They will never succeed.
So a call to unity for the Russian people, that the U.S. and the Western allies are all against them, but they're going to stand together in order to defeat the West. And that was really the call from Vladimir Putin over the weekend. And, of course, when you look at these kinds of elections underneath the headlines, it's so interesting to me. Some of the sources that I've connected with back in D.C. have talked about this idea that for some odd reason, Vladimir Putin really cares about the perception of a free and fair election. Now, it's clear that it wasn't. It's also clear that he has rewritten the rules and rewritten the governing documents of Russia numerous times. And someone who is supposed to be limited to 2 terms is suddenly on number 5. Something's up. So the questions then become much deeper than that underneath the headlines in terms of what's happening inside of Russia. How strong is that propaganda machine, state-run media, controlled by Vladimir Putin and his minions? What does that all mean? And of course, a lot of this ties directly to what's going on in Ukraine. Of course, there were reports over the weekend of some of those Ukrainian cities, villages, that were forced to vote because they were now Russian territory, and they had to vote, and they had to vote for Vladimir Putin. So that's a whole interesting dynamic. The thing I worry about the most that nobody's really talking about is the Russian people. I think there are so many inside of Russia that are just exhausted. Everybody says, well, how could it possibly be? Are the Russian people really okay with this, or have they just totally bought into Vladimir Putin and what he's promising? I think it's one of those exhaustions that you run out of energy before you run out of opportunity. I think the Russian people are extraordinary, and yet they live in this society where I think the vast majority of them know that it's not just possible that the government or the media could be telling them something that is not the truth, that it is the highest likelihood that both their government and their media are not telling them the truth. So imagine that. We can complain about media. We can complain about politicians. We can complain about big government. And those are all legitimate complaints, by the way, here in the United States. But imagine being a freedom-loving person in Russia. That's exhausting. That's exasperating. We've talked about it here in the United States, the fact that so many are disconnecting from the political process because they are so exhausted, because they are running out of energy to stand up and to speak out, or just the way those conversations are being carried out. And when everyone gives up, that's a really good day for authoritarians. That's a good day for thugs and bad guys and dictators. That's a good day for people in power in administrative states. That's a good day for oligarchs and those who are part of the crony capitalism society. And so that's why it matters. That's why we talk about it on this show, is that it does matter. And we can point and say, oh, how could anybody fall for that in Russia? It's not a very far fall, my friends. It is not that far. And that's not to be alarmist, and that's not to be a doom and gloomer, because I've never had more confidence in the future of the country because of the American people. But it means that we have to be careful that we don't run out of energy before we run out of opportunity. We need to make sure that we don't run out of energy before we run out of trust, not just in institutions, not just in government, but in each other. Because that's where the worry lies for me. We'll overcome. We'll go through the pendulum swings of Democrats and Republicans, and hopefully at some point we have some swings to independents and middle ground folks, and a host of others, by the way. And we'll play through all of that. We're incredibly resilient that way. But where we get into trouble is when we run out of energy and we disconnect, because you can't help create the change. You can't be part of the solution. I listened to former Governor Mike Leavitt this morning with a great reminder for all of us as it relates to change. When it comes to change, you can fight against it and die. You can accept it and maybe have a chance. Or you can lead it and prosper and make real progress. And that's the job. We all have a job to lead. And I mean real lead, not just because of a title or a position, but by our individual actions every day. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Hercules Credit Union has been around since 1946, always about growing stronger together. One of the things that I love about Hercules is their commitment to educating their members. This is not about a transaction, a financial transaction. This is about education and growing stronger together. It's about community, and I love that with Hercules Credit Union. Right now, if you're buying a first home, that's a big decision. That's a big deal with lots of big headaches, challenges, and a lot of stressors. Hercules Credit Union can solve those for you. They have experts that can help you navigate all the intricacies of getting that loan, whether it's making sure you have a down payment as low as $1,000 up to 100% loan-to-value financing. Check it all out. Home Court Advantage Loans at Hercules Credit Union. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City. Or, as always, with our friends at Hercules Credit Union, you can just find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
It's NCAA bracket time, and we have you covered. This Thursday and Friday, get bracket updates every 15 minutes. Find out who's winning, who's losing, and who's breaking your bracket. KSL Bracket Fun, all day this Thursday and Friday on KSL News Radio.
Furnishing our living spaces hasn't changed much in decades. Until now. Euromax authentic European furniture starts with the room. Cabinets, sliding doors, dressers, and desks that are as smart as they are sleek and modern. Combining classic European design, exceptional quality American craftsmanship with convenience, comfort, and technology. Euromax declutters your space, designing entire walls of elegant, smart, and stylish storage, taking beautiful advantage of every inch. Living rooms, bathrooms, kitchen, and bedrooms. Features like concealed wiring, built-in charging, integrated lighting, automation and tech. Sustainable, eco-friendly furniture built for your lifestyle without compromise. Construction, finish, and hardware feature a lifetime warranty. Prepare to be excited about your living space. See it in action at EuromaxFurniture.com. EuromaxFurniture.com. Euromax, built for you.
If there's a problem during your siding, gutter, or window installation project, most contractors will try to hide it, ignore it, or blame someone else. It's called passing the buck or turning a blind eye, or my favorite, finger pointing. My question is, where is the accountability? Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and look, sometimes problems just happen, no matter who you hire. Maybe the wrong color siding gets delivered, despite the order being placed perfectly, or maybe a downspout gets cut short. Honestly, it could be anything. At RGS Exteriors, mistakes are rare, but if something goes wrong, I can absolutely, positively, 100% guarantee you we'll never hide it, and we'll never pass the buck. We'll make certain everything turns out right for you. That's people over profits. That's the RGS Exteriors way. For a free estimate on siding, gutters, or windows, call 801-280-3110, rgsexteriors.com, rgsexteriors.com.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Allies Tax Relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Jeff Kaplan. When you're online, that's sometimes a source of fourth-hand information. Somebody does the reporting. Another website Googles, they find it, they rewrite it, and by the time you read it, you know the old game telephone. But KSL is a source of primary information. We have reporters on the street. They're out in the field finding out the details. And the difference between online and KSL News Radio, night and day.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomis. First, Republican State Senator Kurt Bramble is retiring after 24 years in the Utah legislature. Second, Taylorsville police say 33-year-old Fuede Afeaki is the man shot and killed by their officers yesterday. They'd been called out to help with a domestic dispute. And third, Alpine School District is pausing a plan to issue a $175 million bond to build a new high school. 61 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, just when you thought primary election season was over, it's really not. There's still a lot of votes left to be done. And in particular, tomorrow, the state of Ohio will hold their primary contest, in particular for Senate. Voting on the GOP candidate that will face the current Democratic incumbent, Senator Brown. The two frontrunners in the primary are men representing very different visions of the Republican Party. The Ohio Senate election is one of those critical races, bellwether in the country, has been turning more red of late, has been a typical swing state. The presidential race clearly runs through Ohio, and as we talked about earlier in the show, even things like the sale of U.S. Steel to Nippon Steel has an Ohio connection to it for both President Biden and for Republicans. And so Ohio is always in the middle of the action. And it's so fascinating to look at what's going on in this Senate race, both from the Republican standpoint, which vision really leads out. But there's also a Democratic component in the Republican primary that we'll get to as well. And as always, when we're trying to make the news make sense, we turn to our friends at The Dispatch, thedispatch.com. And really pleased to have joining us for the first time on the show, John McCormack, senior editor at The Dispatch. He writes on politics and policy and does both of those in a brilliant way. And John, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, fantastic piece today, going through really kind of these competing visions in terms of the Republican primary. So give us your sense and your take in terms of how are each of these candidates framing things, and what do you think we'll learn coming out of Ohio tomorrow?
Bernie Moreno, he's a businessman, started out a number of car dealerships. He is sort of the populist Trump-backed candidate in the race. Then you've got Matt Dolan. He's a GOP state senator. His family owns Cleveland's professional baseball team, now the Guardians. And he's more of a traditional Republican, backed by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, former GOP Senator Rob Portman. On policy issues, you can see a clear divide on the issue of Ukraine aid. Somebody like, Bernie Moreno, the populist, he's opposed to any more aid. Matt Dolan speaks of things like our international commitments, how helping Ukraine helps America, keeps us strong, keeps our commitments. They're fighting over there, we're not fighting over here, or other places in Europe rather. Someone like Dolan will run saying, listen, I voted for Trump in 2016, 2020. I'm happy to vote for him in 24. But he doesn't, he does a contrast with Trump on matters of temperament and says he's for Trump policies. Whereas somebody like Bernie Moreno says, just full-fledged, full-throated, I love this guy. He's a great American. How dare you say he's not a good man? That was explicitly his argument over the weekend in Ohio at a Trump rally, where Trump appeared alongside Moreno.
Yeah, so interesting. And so as you look at how they're jockeying that position, where does the energy seem to be as you look at that race, and whether it's the former president or whether it's the Governor DeWine or former Senator Portman? Anyone getting any kind of traction there in terms of this, or is this just going to be more kind of populist versus establishment kind of framing going into Tuesday?
Well, several polls from March had showed either a few-point lead for Dolan or a couple-point lead for Moreno, but it showed a really big undecided group. And that is why I think that you would still, and with Trump's endorsement, I think you would still say, give a slight edge to Moreno here. Just given that, we saw how this all played out in 2022. The Trump-backed candidate, J.D. Vance, also ran against Dolan back then. Dolan he did a couple points better than his final margin, Dolan did, but Vance did about, 6-7 points better than his final margin once those undecideds were allocated. So Vance's overperformance of the polls in 22 makes me think that, that Moreno could do the same thing. On the other hand, you don't really know that, that there wasn't really this united front behind Rob Portman and DeWine behind Dolan back then. Dolan surged late. He's been able to put a lot more money into this race, although he's had to deal with Democrats coming in and helping Moreno at the end.
Yeah, and I want to get into that portion of the program, because that's the think again moment there, where suddenly you see a Democratic super PAC, the Senate Majority PAC, pouring in $3 million into ads for the person that could end up being the challenger to the Democrats in the fall. So walk us through that strategy. We saw it play out a little bit in places like Michigan in the last cycle, where Democrats kind of tinkered and tampered in terms of voting for some of the candidates they thought might be easier to win. Is that kind of the same thing you're seeing play out now?
Yeah, it's kind of the same strategy. This goes back to, remember Todd Akin back in Missouri? Claire McCaskill was openly proud how they boosted him, and they ended up winning. So it ended up paying off, I guess, in the sense that they kept their seat. But if you do that too many times, eventually you sort of push the party in this direction. That's no excuse for, Republicans to have their own free will. They can decide who they're going to vote for. They can see that Democrats are doing this, and they could, take that into account and vote differently. But yeah, so this group that's sort of a front group, they're backed by this, again, the main Senate Democratic Super PAC, Senate Majority Fund, or PAC, is funneling $3 million just in the final weekend of this race. So that's a big chunk of change just to be spent over several days. And basically they look at the polls, and the polls do show sort of a consistent pattern where Dolan is a stronger candidate than Moreno is. Now, I would say that in either event, Brown's still going to have a tough race in his hands, because Trump won Ohio by 8 points in 2016. He won it again by 8 points in 2020. Now, Brown can outrun Biden, but can he outrun him by 8 to 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points? How many points is he going to need to outrun Biden by to win in the fall? And so all these polls that show Brown leading, he's still under 50%, depends on the poll again. And, some polls one poll I saw had, Dolan up 2 points over Brown, and Brown was up 4 points over Moreno. The other polls showed Brown with a lead over both, but 3 or 4 points better, doing better against Moreno than against Dolan. So that's it's just simple politics. Democrats are willing to take the risk on a more Trumpist guy who opposes Ukraine aid actually becoming senator if it increases the chances that their guy wins the race outright.
Yeah, and of course that'll be an important thing for Democrats in terms of maintaining that control of the Senate, which is going to be a real crucial factor again rolling into the fall of this year. And then finally, before I let you go, give us one other thing that you're watching rolling into Ohio in particular, and in the weeks ahead that you think might have an impact as we start marching towards those fall campaigns.
Yeah, I think that, just again, how much can these Democrats outrun Joe Biden? The other state you got to watch. I mean, Ohio and Montana are really the two states that are going to decide the outcome of this election. If either one of those goes Republican, you're probably going to end up with a 51-49 Republican Senate at the very least. And then it just depends on how much deeper they can get. But these are both going to be tough races. I mean, Jon Tester and Sherrod Brown, the Democrats in both these states, they've had the ability to hang on in very tough environments. Tester, he won in 2012, back when Mitt Romney won Montana big. Jon Tester was still able to hold on to his seat. We've seen a little bit less ticket splitting over the years. So, for example, back in 2020, there was a very popular incumbent Democrat in Montana named Steve Bullock. He was a sitting governor, and he still managed to lose by 10 points, the popular Democrat, as Trump won the state by, I forget, like 16 points or something like that. So, I think Brown and Tester, they can outrun Biden, but it's just going to be a question how far they need to outrun him.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Great insight, great perspective. As always, John McCormick, senior editor at The Dispatch. We love our friends over at The Dispatch. You should check that out. And The Dispatch should be part of your morning routine. It's part of my morning routine. It's where the news makes sense, where you can get real great journalism, fantastic writing, and even better thinking. That will help you think straight on the big issues of the day. John McCormick, thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you, boys. So appreciate it.
All right, again, that's John McCormick, senior editor at The Dispatch. And again, our friends over at The Dispatch are an important part of getting to the right kind of news that can help you decipher it all, cut through all the hype and the hoopla and all the anger, fear, frustration messaging, and actually get to the issues that, yes, you deal with the politics, but you deal with that so that you can get to the policy, so that you can get to the principles. And when we get to the principles, we usually get it right in the end. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. When we come back, more Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. One of the most senior members of Utah's legislature is calling it quits after 24 years. Republican Senator Kurt Bramble has served in the legislature since the turn of the century. He'll serve through the end of this term, but he won't run for re-election. One of the issues he's best known for is the law that allows candidates to qualify for the primary ballot by submitting signatures rather than winning their nominations at a party convention. Alpine School District canceled a meeting intended to push a multi-million-dollar bond issue for a new high school, leaving many to suspect their plans are on pause. The communications director for the Alpine School District, Rich Stoll, says
that
that's
board
not
meeting
the case.
Was called to consider lease revenue bond was just to understand what the options were. It was a learning process, a learning phase.
The school board is actively looking at all its options to fund the new Saratoga Springs High School. A bond is still on the table, but the board knows that some new legislation will limit the amount of money they'll be able to raise that way. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 75 points. The NASDAQ closing up 130 points, and the S&P 500 at the close of trading was up 32 points. And just ahead, it looks like a sunny week ahead with the advent of spring. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Addiction is a family illness, and at Renaissance Ranch, long-term sobriety is a reality. We help family relationships so you don't have to recover alone.
We're the professional staff at Renaissance Ranch.
We don't see addicts as bad men trying to be good.
Rather sick men that need to get well.
This is our message to them, that it doesn't matter how lost, beaten down, or defeated you may feel.
Our greatest desire for you
is to see what we see.
That you are capable of healing.
Prepare to emerge to be the husband, the father, and the son that you were destined to be. So to our new brother,
we say, welcome home.
Addiction is a family illness, and at Renaissance Ranch, long-term sobriety is a reality. We help family relationships so you don't have to recover alone. New hope, new life at Renaissance Ranch.
Ladies, Dave's Bernina makes it easy for you to own a new Bernina quilting machine.
We're celebrating National Quilting Month with extraordinary pricing and offers.
At Dave's Bernina in Provo and St. George.
Saved on the Bernina Q Series quilting machine.
All machines are on sale with extra discounts.
Such as $5,999 on the Bernina Q16 on adjustable folding table, $8,999 on the Bernina Q16 on 10-inch studio frame. Take advantage of 2.99 APR financing for 60 months on select machines. Buy the all-new Bernina L890QE Serger. Receive a free gift package worth over $1,600.
During this sale, treat your sewing love to some sweet extras with special discounts and super savings on Bernina machines and accessories.
Special pricing on Bernina 475 and 770 Cape machines. A great value.
Dave's Bernina, 2017 North 550 West in Provo and 691 East St. George Boulevard.
Hi there, it's Congressman Blake Moore. My team and I are working hard to advance your priorities in Congress, from addressing federal budget reform on the House Budget Committee to pushing a bipartisan pro-family tax package on the House Ways and Means Committee. We've also enjoyed engaging with you at our recent in-person town halls and staff mobile office hours as we hear your questions, priorities, and concerns. I want to update you all on the things that we are working on and to take your questions. So be sure to join my telephone town hall on Wednesday, March 20th at 1 p.m. by dialing 833-305-1678. That's Wednesday, March 20th at 1 p.m. at 833-305-1678. Visit my website at blakemore.house.gov and follow me on social media at Rep. Blake Moore for details. I look forward to hearing from you then. Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we did have a crash northbound I-15 at 21st South. That just pulled away. I-15 in great shape. Need a perfect event venue? There's a place. This is the Place Heritage Park. Ideal for wedding events featuring 11 venues. Beautiful grounds, affordability for any celebration. Call or visit thisistheplace.org. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunshine today, tomorrow, the next day, maybe some clouds Thursday and Friday. And right now, we're at 62 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas at the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's been hard to miss a lot of the activity coming out of the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party in the House of Representatives. And, of course, with the TikTok stir still stirring and everyone waiting to see what the Senate decides to do with all of that, a lot is still up in the air. And, of course, the committee itself, again, this special Select Committee has been in the middle of that. There's a host of other things going on, but nobody's really sure what next is for that committee or if there will be a next, if the committee will be reauthorized in the next fiscal year. And so we want to take a look at what's underneath the hood in all of that, get beyond just the headlines that we see, especially as it relates to TikTok. And someone who's done the deeper dive under the hood, Ari Hawkins, of course, is a reporter at Politico. And Ari, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's get in first just to the Select Committee itself. It was a little over a year ago that it came into existence. Tell us about how it came into existence and then why that existence may not be so certain moving forward.
Sure, yes, I'm happy to. So, yes, the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party was really sort of thought of as this committee that could ensure that there maintains a sort of bipartisan perspective on pushing forward policies that relates to China. There's so much sort of a partisan, I guess, bickering, and the sort of perceived threat of the communist regime of China was enough to sort of empower both parties to try to sort of set that aside in a little bit of a deliberate way and come together. It doesn't have any legislative power, which has been a point of contention, meaning that some of the work is more relegated to things like requesting individuals testify. However, they just had this TikTok bill, which, as I'm sure you've all seen, got a positive response in the House. It faces many problems in the Senate. However, what it did signify was that there is this sort of bipartisan perspective on China in the House where both parties think that there can be this legislative action. The problem going forward now is that now that this piece is done, more lawmakers are sort of considering this as a means of kind of going one step further. Now that we have this bipartisan perspective as a norm that is through the committee, we now want to sort of go on and do these sort of different specific legislative pieces, kind of taking that work a little bit of a step further. It sounds a little bit moving on or past the current committee.
Yeah, and so as you look at that, of course, part of that will be just that appropriation, that reauthorization process, and so that will be an interesting tug and pull. You pointed that out in your piece. Give us a sense of how that is playing out and what you expect to see kind of in the months ahead as that gets either reauthorized or not.
Well, it's definitely an interesting sort of saga here. We've chatted in our piece to lawmakers on both sides of the aisle with no real consensus. We talked to a Democrat from New York, Richie Torres, who talked about how necessary it is to maintain the China Committee in the next session. At the same time, we talked to a Republican from South Dakota, Dusty Johnson, who talked about how effectively after this TikTok bill, the work of the committee might then sort of go on. So not necessarily immediate approval for reauthorization. At the same time, the leadership, the people that are really in charge of these decisions, are being, I guess, more quiet about what they're anticipating. There's a lot sort of to that. There's certain Democratic staffers that I've chatted with that have indicated that the threat that the bipartisan sort of focus in the age of Trump's very partisan approach to China might not function in the same way. At the same time, some Republicans are thinking about kind of moving on and going into, again, those sort of more specific policies, sectors after this sort of bipartisan perspective was solidified.
Yeah, and I think it's an important distinction there that this Select Committee doesn't really have jurisdiction. It doesn't really have a lot of that power that we normally think of when it comes to committees in the House of Representatives. And you pointed this out in your piece as well, that there are some staffers on some of those other committees saying, hey, wait a minute, this Select Committee thinks they're all that and a little bit more, and they're kind of in our kitchen and we'd just as soon have them out. And then that gets into the whole idea of lawyers and lobbyists and influence peddling as it relates to China as well. How is that dynamic playing out?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting point. One of the sort of interesting facets of the China Select Committee is that at the same time that it doesn't have that legislative power, it does have a lot of, media focus. It's a very headline grabbing. There's a lot of attention on it because there's so much concern about China, the issue broadly. But what that brings about is, at least from a staffer for a member on a House Standing Committee who talked to us, saying that the China Select Committee, quotes, moonlights in stealing our jurisdiction. There's clearly a bit of a sort of behind-the-scenes fight over here in terms of usurping other people's sort of power with this committee that, again, doesn't actually legislate, so arguably is comparatively weaker than other committees. Yeah. In terms of some of those other tensions that you mentioned, we've sort of seen a little bit of this more hawkish versus less hawkish divide. There were several senior Republicans who were a bit, irritated by the fact that certain recommendations from a policy report that was published earlier came about through recommendations from lobbyists rather than select committee leaders. And that has just a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot of interests in these policy reports. They're hoping other committees sort of see these policies, have this bipartisan backing, and then kind of take the mantle from there. So the fact that certain hawkish policies like a PNTR repeal, a complete PNTR repeal rather, didn't necessarily make it in the exact way to that report makes it sort of seem like the committee might not have as much power as indicated.
Yeah, and then as you look at this moving forward, any other dynamics that you're keeping your eye on? Again, obviously the reauthorization is one thing, how these other committees of jurisdiction play into all of that. Anything else you're keeping your eye on? You also mentioned the kind of the impact of the presidential factor in terms of what kind of things might be brought to bear or to the front as it relates to China. Anything else you're keeping your eye on?
For sure, yeah. The White House will be a very central sort of piece into all of this. It'll be worth watching how receptive other Republican lawmakers are to the more sort of hawkish and, less popular, particularly around business groups' perspective from China. The House Select Committee, for instance, hasn't really had to sort of meaningfully engage with some of the most hawkish provisions from Trump or proposals like a 60% tariff on all Chinese imports. And it'll be definitely interesting to watch if the Republicans on the committee who have gone down a more bipartisan route with the committee, how it's functioning now, end up shifting into that more hawkish lane. I'll be curious to see about that.
Great insight, great perspective. Ari Hawkins, a reporter at Politico. Check out that piece at Politico.com. Ari, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Great insight from Ari Hawkins, again, a reporter at Politico. And as all things in Congress, it's political in the end. And here you have this select committee. Again, it's different from those more formalized committees of jurisdiction on various issues. And so this is one that clearly has had a moment. The question is whether that moment will lead to a future and reauthorization, or whether this all goes back to the committees, or if it just becomes all politics once again. We'll continue to watch all of that here on Inside Sources. We'll step aside. We'll come back for one more segment coming up next.
A lot of you already know that when it comes to HVAC maintenance, repair, and replacement, no one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services. And if you've been thinking about replacing your old furnace and air conditioner, this ad's for you. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and right now we're having our most popular sale of the year. Here's how it works. When you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it, about $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. One of the reasons this sale is so popular, there are no gimmicks, like you have to buy our most expensive air conditioner to qualify for a free furnace. You could buy our most basic, least expensive air conditioner, and you'd still get a new furnace for just the cost to install it. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services by March 31st and schedule a free estimate. One of our HVAC supervisors will come to your home and explain everything. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services today and schedule your free estimate. 443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
A fiduciary has the regulatory obligation to put your best interest first. Trajan Wealth is a financial fiduciary for your investments. With Trajan Wealth, the more you make, the more we make. Our interests are aligned. Most other financial advisors are brokers held to a lesser standard and are paid an upfront commission to sell you something. Call Trajan Wealth 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Healthcare with human kindness is here. It's at Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Together, we have a common purpose, partnering with you in health and healing using powerful medicine, powerful technology, and the greatest power of all, human kindness. You'll know it when you see it, because human kindness is in every care site and in every caregiver. Common Spirit Health. Hello, human kindness.
The Utah RV Palooza is back and packed with new and used RVs to fit every budget. March 21st through the 24th, come to the only free RV show in the area at the Mountain America Expo Center. Shop travel trailers, fifth wheels, toy haulers, motorhomes, truck campers, and more. You'll find monthly payments starting under $149 per month on approved credit for select new RVs, like a new 2024 GoPlay 19BH travel trailer. You'll also find huge savings on used motorhomes. We've got select 2023 and 2024 low mileage models from Thor and Jayco heavily discounted. The best deals don't last, so start shopping now at UtahRVPalooza.com and make sure to tour the full lineup of GoPlay travel trailers, one of the fastest growing RV brands in Utah. Get special financing options like 0 payments until June OAC, as well as clearance pricing on all remaining new 2023s. And unlike other shows, free admission. Don't miss the Utah RV Palooza. 4 days only, Thursday, March 21st through Sunday, March 24th at the Mountain America Expo Center. See you there. Stock number L75171, based on 20% down, 8.99% APR for 180 months, subject to prior sale. See dealer for details.
We're the professional staff at Renaissance Ranch.
We are all recovered drug addicts and alcoholics enjoying life in recovery.
We don't see addicts as bad men trying to be good.
Rather sick men that need to get well.
This is our message to them. That it doesn't matter how lost, beaten down, or defeated you may feel. We know you can overcome the darkness as we have.
And now, we are honored to be here for you and to show you the way out.
Our greatest desire for you is to see what we see.
That you are capable of healing.
That you are divine.
Prepare to emerge as the father, husband, and son that you were destined to be.
So to our new brother, we say, welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome to the Brotherhood of Renaissance Ranch.
Jazz Plus is here. With Jazz Plus, you can watch games live from your TV, computer, tablet, or phone. So don't miss any of the action when you're at home or away. Can't get enough of your favorite team? Go behind the scenes and see what the team is up to on and off the court. With flexible plans, you can choose what works for you, from full season to monthly, or just pick a single game you want to watch. Sign up and subscribe today at UtahJazzPlus.com.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie. Now available anywhere you get your podcasts.
The best campfire stories happen when the sun goes down. And the best savings happen at General RV during the RV Show After Party Sale, March 20th through the 23rd. RV shows are over, but you can still get a low RV show price, and that'll save you thousands. Plus, come in to see how you can camp on us this summer. Start your next campfire story with how much you saved. Only at General RV in Draper off I-15.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Republican State Senator Kurt Bramble is retiring after 24 years in the Utah legislature. Second, Taylorsville police say 33-year-old Fuede Afeaki is the man shot and killed by their officers yesterday. They'd been called out to help with a domestic dispute. And third, Alpine School District is pausing a plan to issue a $175 million bond to build a new high school. 61 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, of course, like many of you, I was waiting with great anticipation for March Madness and the big dance of college basketball to begin. And, of course, that did start yesterday. But the madness of March has been spreading into a lot of different places and spaces, particularly into the political scene. And if you've been with us throughout the course of the show today, we have been talking about all kinds of madness happening in the month of March. We talked about the fact that this week we have one more shutdown showdown, a potential government partial shutdown because of the way Congress continues to fail to do its job. And they've perfected the art of not just kicking the can down the road, but now we do it in two-step. We kick two cans down the road. They're attached together by a string. But the madness is that this is one of the very few things that Congress has to do. It's outlined in the Constitution. It is the job that everyone signs up to do when they run for election. And so it's the job that they should do. And that's part of the madness that is March, because we keep kicking this down the road, and it's costing us to the tune of $34 trillion in debt. That's going to hurt all of us and the future for sure. We also talked about the madness of a bipartisan infrastructure bill, which we can applaud. A great bipartisan bill. The problem is when the bill text is so flimsy and it bequeaths to the agencies the ability to make the rules, write the laws, and enforce them, that suddenly the implementation of a bipartisan infrastructure bill is hyperpartisan. And the Biden administration is taking something that should be bipartisan, getting broadband to our rural communities, and suddenly it's a political issue that is being applied in a very hyper-partisan kind of way. We also talked about the madness of a potential sell of a steel company. Now, the name is U.S. Steel, but it is not the government's steel company. It's an international company. It's owned by shareholders. To Nippon Steel, which is headquartered in Japan, but is also a public company held by shareholders around the world. But the president is weighing in. That's a little bit of madness. That's not the job, nor is it the responsibility. Why? because it's political. And not just on the president's part. The president doesn't want this to happen because he says he's protecting steelworkers. At the same time, J.D. Vance, a Republican in Ohio, he suddenly is very interested in this not happening. Why? Because there's a steel company in Ohio that would actually like to buy that steel company. Meanwhile, the people who are getting hurt are the actual steel workers. Nippon Steel was going to invest $1.4 billion, which would be good for steel worker jobs and compensation and future. But the madness of it all is that it's all wrapped up in the politics, which keeps us in the political space and in the state of Ohio, where they will have their primary tomorrow. And there is a battle on the Republican side between one candidate who is a much more traditional Republican, one who is supported by the former president. And they're having their battle back and forth. That will be very indicative of where the Republican Party goes in the state of Ohio. Now, the state of Ohio is an important political space for both Democrats and Republicans because it's often a swing state. It's been more red of late, supporting former President Trump, but it is one of those that tends to swing back and forth. So in the madness category, we actually have the Democratic Party and their super PAC spending $3 million in ads for the final weekend for a Republican candidate who they think will be easier to beat in the fall so that Democrats can maintain control of the United States Senate. So that is the madness of March, and they haven't even thrown up the ball to tip off the first game of March Madness, but we'll continue to watch all the madness that's going on in our nation's capital. And hopefully we'll get a few people who can get back to what it's really supposed to be about. And when I look to March Madness, of course, I actually go back to the true originator of March Madness, Coach John Wooden, who won 10 NCAA championships and who understood a thing or two about leadership. He was the Wizard of Westwood. He was unrivaled, unmatched in any way, shape, or form. Not because of he won a lot of basketball games, but because he lived by a set of principles that mattered, that not only worked for him, but made a difference for all the players that he coached and the university that he represented. And we're going to take some lessons from Coach Wooden's playbook over the next several days that I think are worth looking at, that are worth celebrating, and I think are worth emulating because he was a principle-driven leader, and we need more leaders like that everywhere, in our communities, in our businesses, in our institutions, and clearly in our government. Coach Wooden said that reputation is what you are perceived to be. Character, on the other hand, is what you really are, and it is character that counts. Now imagine if we just applied that. I know that would be March Madness at its finest, but imagine if our elected officials at every level just lived by a very simple rule. Coach Wooden also said never be late. I'd like to send that memo to the White House staff. Never be late. There's no excuse for a president to be late. You can lose when you outscore somebody in a game, and you can win when you're outscored because it's about living up to your own potential, not how well you can compete against somebody else. John Wooden also said ability is a poor man's wealth. And adversity is the state in which man most easily becomes acquainted